While Washington slammed the door shut with tariffs north of 100%, Ottawa quietly cracked open a side entrance into North America. 6 major Chinese-backed car brands are no longer waiting for permission to enter the United States. They are already building dealerships, testing vehicles in freezing temperatures, and studying American consumers from just across the border. This is not a rumor. This is a multi-billion-dollar trade shift happening right now, and by the time we get to brand number 1, you will understand why Detroit is nervous. Let's start the countdown. Number 6 is Leapmotor, the smallest name on this list but arguably the most quietly strategic. Leapmotor does not have the brand recognition of its rivals, but it has something almost as valuable, a partnership with Stellantis, the massive automotive group that owns Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, and Ram. Stellantis has taken a significant stake in Leapmotor and is now distributing its vehicles across multiple continents. In August of 2026, Leapmotor pushed into Argentina with a lineup of hybrid sport utility vehicles, a clear signal that the Americas are now part of its expansion map. Leapmotor is also eligible for Canada's new import quota system, meaning its vehicles can legally enter the Canadian market at a fraction of the tariff rate Chinese brands would normally face. Financially, Leapmotor's advantage is not raw scale, it is distribution. Because Stellantis already operates thousands of dealerships across the United States and Canada, there is a theoretical pathway where Leapmotor vehicles could one day appear inside existing Jeep or Chrysler showrooms if trade restrictions ever loosen. That is a shortcut most Chinese brands do not have. Leapmotor's technology mirrors the broader Chinese electric vehicle playbook: aggressive battery cost reduction, simplified manufacturing, and rapid platform sharing across multiple vehicle types. On the border wall side, Leapmotor faces the exact same wall every other brand on this list faces. United States connected vehicle regulations banning Chinese software beginning with model year 2027, and Chinese hardware bans starting with model year 2030, apply regardless of which company distributes the car. Even if Stellantis wanted to sell Leapmotor vehicles in Detroit or Los Angeles tomorrow, federal law would stop it cold. Still, the partnership itself is being watched closely by trade analysts, because it represents a potential blueprint, an American company acting as the delivery vehicle, literally and figuratively, for Chinese-engineered vehicles once, or if, the political winds shift. The impact on the American market right now is limited, but the long game is not. If Stellantis is comfortable partnering with a Chinese manufacturer for global expansion, it tells you how seriously legacy automakers are taking the threat of being out-engineered on cost. Leapmotor may be 6th on this list today, but it is a warning sign of how deeply intertwined Chinese and Western automakers have already become behind the scenes. Number 5 is Great Wall Motor, the parent company behind the Aura, Tank, and Haval brands. Great Wall has not made the same splashy dealership announcements as some of its rivals, but do not mistake quiet for weak. This is one of the most technologically aggressive manufacturers in China, and it has been investing heavily in next-generation sensor technology, including a new supplier partnership announced in the summer of 2026 for advanced light detection and ranging systems, the kind of hardware that powers driver assistance and autonomous features. Great Wall is targeting mass production of this next-generation sensor suite by the end of 2026, positioning its vehicles to compete on advanced safety technology, not just sticker price. Great Wall's footprint in Canada is still developing. Unlike BYD or Chery, there have been no confirmed dealership counts or launch dates as of the most recent reporting. What we do know is that Great Wall is closely monitoring Canada's new vehicle quota system, the same one its rivals are racing to fill. Its historical strength has been in emerging markets across Latin America, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, which means North America is a newer frontier for the company rather than a home turf expansion. Financially, Great Wall's Aura sub-brand focuses on small, stylish, affordable electric vehicles, while Tank targets rugged sport utility buyers, an interesting hedge that covers both the cost-conscious commuter and the traditional truck-loving North American consumer. This dual strategy could make Great Wall more adaptable than brands that only build one type of vehicle. On the geopolitical front, Great Wall faces the identical regulatory wall as every Chinese manufacturer: triple-digit tariffs, national security reviews, and the looming connected vehicle software and hardware bans. Because its North American ambitions are less publicly aggressive than BYD or Chery, it has attracted less political attention so far, which might actually work in its favor as a quieter long-term entrant rather than a lightning rod. For the American market, Great Wall represents a slower burn threat. It is not knocking loudly on the door yet, but its investment in cutting-edge sensor and safety technology suggests that when it does arrive in force, it may arrive with a genuine technological edge, not just a lower price tag. Number 4 is SAIC, the massive state-connected Chinese conglomerate behind the MG brand. Here is where this story gets a little nostalgic for American car buyers. MG is not a brand new name invented for the electric vehicle era. It carries with it decades of history in the United States, remembered by an older generation of drivers for its charming, lightweight sports cars sold across America back in the 1960s, 70s, and into the 80s. That old brand equity, however faded, is a marketing advantage that money alone usually cannot buy. SAIC's global electric vehicle ambitions are massive, and the company is one of the manufacturers being closely tracked as Canada's new lower tariff quota system fills up. Specific dealership counts and launch timelines for MG in Canada are less documented publicly than BYD or Chery's plans, but SAIC is unmistakably part of the broader wave of Chinese manufacturers testing the North American waters through Canada's newly opened door. Financially, MG has built a reputation across international markets for offering electric vehicles at price points well below Western competitors, without sacrificing modern styling or technology features. SAIC's scale as one of the largest automakers in China, with deep state industrial backing, gives it enormous room to compete on price while still investing in research and development. The border wall situation for SAIC and MG is no different than for any other brand on this list. The same tariff stack applies, the same connected vehicle software and hardware bans loom on the horizon, and the same USMCA regional content rules block any easy backdoor through Canadian or Mexican assembly, unless a vehicle is truly built with enough North American sourced parts and labor to qualify. What makes SAIC worth watching for American viewers specifically is the emotional marketing angle. If MG ever does find a legal pathway into the United States, it will not be selling itself as a mysterious new foreign brand. It will be selling itself as the return of a name that grandparents and car enthusiasts already recognize, wrapped around 21st century battery technology. That kind of nostalgia marketing, paired with aggressive pricing, is exactly the kind of 1-2 punch that keeps Detroit executives awake at night. Number 3 is Geely, and specifically its ultra-luxury electric brand Lotus, along with its premium electric brand Zeekr. This is where the story takes its first major twist, because in July of 2026, Lotus made history as the very first Chinese-built electric vehicle to actually arrive and be delivered to Canadian customers under the country's new vehicle import quota. And it was not a cheap economy car. It was a luxury electric sport utility vehicle, the Lotus Electra, built in Wuhan, China, and delivered to Canadian showrooms with a starting price close to 120,000 Canadian dollars. Think about that for a moment. While most people assumed the first Chinese vehicle to break through would be an ultra-cheap budget car undercutting everyone on price, it was actually a six-figure luxury vehicle that arrived first, proving that Chinese manufacturing has already conquered the premium end of the market, not just the entry-level end. Geely's advantage over every other brand on this list is structural. It already owns Volvo, the beloved Swedish brand, and Polestar, an electric vehicle brand that already sells cars inside the United States today. That means Geely, unlike its rivals, already understands American safety regulations, already has relationships with American regulators, and already has real-world experience navigating the exact bureaucratic maze that is currently blocking its Chinese-branded competitors. In July of 2026, Ford and Geely even announced a joint manufacturing venture together in Valencia, Spain, with operations expected to begin in the first half of 2027 and vehicles rolling out in 2028. When one of Detroit's own giants is willing to build cars side by side with a Chinese conglomerate, that tells you everything about how blurred the lines have already become. The border wall for Geely is slightly different than for its rivals. Because Volvo and Polestar already operate legally inside the United States, there has been growing political pressure in Washington to close what some lawmakers see as a loophole. A proposal moving through the Senate Commerce Committee in 2026 would specifically target and restrict connected vehicles sold by any company more than 15% owned by Chinese entities, a rule that could directly hit Volvo and Polestar even though Americans do not typically think of those brands as Chinese-owned. For the American consumer, Geely represents the sneakiest and arguably most successful long game on this entire list. It did not try to smash through the front door with a Chinese badge slapped on the hood. It bought its way in decades ago through European brands Americans already trusted, and now it is using that same trusted infrastructure to quietly test the electric vehicle future, one Canadian delivery at a time. Number 2 is Chery, and if you have never heard this name before, that is about to change fast. Chery is not a small player trying to break into the industry. It is already China's single largest auto exporter, shipping vehicles to markets across Europe, South America, and the Middle East long before it ever set its sights on North America. In the summer of 2026, Chery representatives sat down directly with Canadian dealers and began cold weather testing its vehicles, adapting them specifically for the freezing winters of the Canadian market, a clear sign of serious long-term commitment rather than a symbolic marketing stunt. Nearly 400 Canadian dealerships have applied to sell Chinese-branded vehicles including Chery, and the company was targeting a sales launch before the end of 2026, pending final regulatory approvals. Chery's lineup includes its Omoda and JQ sub-brands, both heavily focused on affordable electric and hybrid technology built for exactly the kind of driving conditions found across the northern United States and Canada. Here is where Chery's strategy becomes genuinely fascinating. The company's chief executive publicly stated that Chery is actively exploring various options to navigate United States laws and regulations, a remarkably direct admission that the company is not simply hoping tariffs disappear, it is actively searching for legal workarounds. One of those workarounds may already be in motion. Chery has invested in South Korea's KG Mobility, an established automaker with its own manufacturing and distribution infrastructure, potentially giving Chery an indirect route toward North American markets that does not require building a Chinese factory from scratch inside the United States or Canada. On the geopolitical front, Chery faces the same tariff wall as everyone else, but its explosive export growth is impossible to ignore. Chery's European exports alone surged by well over 200% year-over-year heading into the second half of 2026, a growth rate that has genuinely alarmed automotive analysts and put, in the words of one industry publication, Detroit on notice. For American consumers and workers, Chery represents the most aggressive, most globally proven challenger on this list outside of our number one spot. This is not a company testing the waters cautiously. This is the largest Chinese auto exporter on earth, openly stating that cracking the American market is a matter of when and how, not if. And that brings us to number one, the brand you almost certainly guessed correctly, but whose scale might genuinely shock you. It is BYD, the company that has already surpassed Tesla to become the largest electric vehicle manufacturer on the entire planet. Let's start with the Canadian foothold, because BYD's move into Canada is not cautious, it is aggressive and methodically planned. The company intends to open roughly 20 dealerships across Canada by the end of 2027. The rollout is happening in clear phases. Phase 1, arriving in late 2026, places 3 dealerships directly inside the Greater Toronto Area. Phase 2, arriving in early 2027, expands into Vancouver and Montreal. Phase 3, arriving by the middle of 2027, pushes into Calgary, Ottawa, and Quebec City. This is not a toe in the water. This is a coast-to-coast invasion plan. BYD has confirmed 4 specific models for the Canadian market: the ultra-affordable Seagull, the compact Dolphin, the crossover-styled Atto 3, and the sleek electric sedan known as the Seal. And here is the number that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. The BYD Seagull starts at under 25,000 Canadian dollars. That is less than half the starting price of a base model Tesla Model 3. BYD's own top executives, including the president of BYD Americas, publicly confirmed this Canadian launch timeline directly to the public in June of 2026. Financially and technologically, BYD's advantage is almost unfair compared to its competitors. Unlike most automakers who buy their batteries and chips from outside suppliers, BYD builds its own batteries and its own semiconductors in-house. That vertical integration gives it cost advantages that no single American automaker can currently match, because Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis are all still dependent on external battery and chip suppliers, adding cost and complexity that BYD simply does not carry. Now for the border wall, because this is where the story gets its sharpest edge. A Chinese-built vehicle imported into Canada and then shipped south into the United States would face a combined tariff stack of well over 125% once you add together the Chinese-specific tariff, the General Automotive National Security Tariff, and the standard base duty. On top of that, starting with model year 2027, Chinese connected vehicle software will be completely banned from the United States market, followed by a full hardware ban beginning with model year 2030. There is no legal shortcut around this. A Chinese-built BYD cannot simply roll across the Michigan or New York border and be sold to an American customer. BYD has explored a manufacturing workaround before. The company previously announced plans for a factory inside Mexico, which would have allowed it to build vehicles with enough North American content to potentially qualify for preferential USMCA treatment. However, due to rising trade uncertainty and political pressure from Washington, those Mexican factory plans have been suspended, at least for now. Canada is currently being explored as a potential alternative manufacturing location, though as of the most recent reporting, no concrete groundbreaking or factory announcement has been made. Here is the twist that ties this entire story together, and it involves a name you would never expect to be connected to a Chinese electric vehicle strategy: Warren Buffett. Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, has held a stake in BYD since 2008, a full 18 years before Canada ever opened its market to Chinese-built vehicles. One of the most respected long-term investors in American history saw something in this company nearly 2 decades ago, long before anyone was talking about tariffs, trade wars, or Canadian import quotas. And then there is the Tesla twist inside this same story. Because of Canada's new quota framework, Tesla's own Shanghai-built Model 3 vehicles are now being imported into Canada and sold at a price around $39,490 significantly lower than previous Canadian pricing for the same model. An American company, using a Chinese factory, benefiting from the exact same trade framework built to accommodate Chinese electric vehicle brands. That is how tangled this entire supply chain has become. The direct impact on the American market is impossible to ignore. Ford's own chief executive, Jim Farley, told his employees directly in a July 2026 town hall meeting that Chinese automakers could realistically be selling vehicles inside the United States within the next 5 to 10 years. Industry analysts covering global automotive trade have placed the likely window for meaningful Chinese electric vehicle entry into the United States somewhere between 2027 and 2037, with most experts agreeing that the direction of this trend is already fixed. The only real question left is the exact timing, and that timing is almost entirely political rather than technological. So here is where we stand along the world's longest undefended border. 6 major Chinese-backed automakers, ranging from the quietly strategic Leap motor, to the technologically advancing Great Wall motor, to the nostalgically branded SAIC and MG, to the sneaky luxury infiltration of Geely through Lotus and its existing Volvo and Polestar infrastructure, to the globally dominant export machine that is Chery, all the way up to the electric vehicle juggernaut that is BYD, are simultaneously building dealer networks, testing vehicles in Canadian winters, and positioning themselves for a North American future that current American trade law is working hard to delay, but according to nearly every analyst covering this story, may not be able to stop forever. Canada is not a secret backdoor into the United States. The tariffs are real, the connected vehicle bans are real, and the legal barriers are genuinely difficult to bypass. But Canada is something else entirely, a practice run, a testing ground, a place where these companies can build brand recognition, adapt their vehicles to North American winters, train dealer networks, and simply wait for the moment when either the politics shift or American consumer demand for extremely affordable electric vehicles becomes too loud for Washington to ignore. So here is the question for you. If a fully loaded electric vehicle from one of these 6 brands crossed the border legally tomorrow, priced at less than half of what you would pay for a comparable American or Japanese model, would you buy one? Drop your answer in the comments below, and let us know which of these 6 brands you think breaks through first.